A naked man stands in the middle of the South Dakota prairie, screaming at the sky. And across from him, calm, amused, completely unshaken, sits a medicine man on horseback who is trying very hard not to laugh. That single scene in Dances with Wolves changed how Hollywood saw Native people forever. But here is the part that nobody talks about. The man on that horse was not Lakota. He did not speak his own language. 15 years before that moment, he was crawling through steel beams for a living and laying carpet in Rochester, New York. His name was Greene. And by the time he died in 2025, he had logged more than 180 film and television credits, earned an Oscar nomination, won a Grammy, received the Order of Canada, and survived a night in 1997 when police surrounded his home for 5 hours because a friend was afraid he was about to end his own life. This is the story of a man who refused to vanish. Number 1. The reserve kid who had nothing. Greene was born on June 22, 1952, in Oswego, a small community on the Six Nations of the Grand River Reserve near Brantford, Ontario. It was the largest First Nations reserve in all of Canada. His father, John, worked as a paramedic and maintenance man. His mother, Lillian, raised the children in conditions that most Americans would barely recognize. Greene's cousin, the actor Gary Farmer, later described it bluntly: Graham grew up with nothing. Absolutely nothing. And that nothing shaped everything that came after. By 14, Greene had dropped out of school and crossed the border to Rochester, New York, taking a job at a carpet warehouse. 14 years old. A warehouse in a foreign country. No safety net. No connections. No plan beyond making it to the next paycheck. By 18, he returned to Canada and enrolled in a welding course at George Brown College in Toronto. Over the next decade, he would cycle through more blue-collar trades than most people attempt in a lifetime. Draftsman, civil technician, high steel worker, carpenter, carpet layer, and eventually, roadie and audio technician for Toronto rock bands. He even ran a recording studio in the Hamilton area. He described his pre-acting resume to Reader's Digest Canada in 2018 with characteristic understatement. I started out as a carpenter, a welder, a draftsman, a carpet layer, a roadie, and an audio tech. Most people would call that a scattered career. Greene called it education. But none of it stuck. None of it felt like the thing he was supposed to be doing. And then a rock musician changed the trajectory of his life with one piece of advice he didn't want to hear. Number 2. The roadie who accidentally found the stage. In the early 1970s, while working as an audio tech for rock bands in Toronto, Greene crossed paths with a musician named Kelly J. from the Canadian band Crowbar. Jay saw something in Greene that Greene himself couldn't see. He kept pushing him, relentlessly, to try out for a play. Not a film, not television. A local stage play. Greene resisted. He was a roadie, a sound guy. He set up equipment and tore it down. Acting was for other people, but Jay wouldn't let it go, and eventually, Greene gave in. His first significant stage credit came in 1976, a touring production of James Reeney's Wacoust through the University of Western Ontario. He was 24 years old and starting from zero. When he watched his first television appearance, a 1979 episode of a Canadian series called The Great Detective, he said it was awful. But instead of quitting, the awfulness made him want to learn. He later described the appeal of film work with his trademark dry humor. These people keep me in the shade, give me food and water, take me to where I say what I'm supposed to say, then they take me back. He compared it to the life of a dog, and he meant it as a compliment. That attitude, amused, unbothered, quietly persistent, would carry him through the next decade of anonymity. Number 3. The slow climb through theater and small roles. For most of the 1980s, Greene was the actor that critics loved, and audiences had never heard of. His film debut came in 1983 in Running Brave, a biopic about the Olympic runner Billy Mills. 2 years later, he appeared opposite Al Pacino in Revolution. He worked on the CBC series Spirit Bay. He appeared in Pow Wow Highway in 1989 and Where the Spirit Lives that same year. But his real prestige lived on the stage. In 1989, Greene won the Dora Mavor Moore Award, Toronto's equivalent of an off-Broadway Tony, for Best Actor, playing the affable drunk Pierre St. Pierre in Thompson Highway's Dry Lips Auto Move to Kapuskasing with Native Earth Performing Arts. It was a stunning performance. Critics called it one of the finest pieces of indigenous theater ever staged, and almost nobody outside of Canada noticed. He reprised the role in 1991 at Toronto's Royal Alexandra Theatre. The the first show by an indigenous author with an all-indigenous cast to ever play that venue. That was real history. But while Greene was earning standing ovations in Toronto, Hollywood was casting white actors in redface and calling it authentic. Casting directors weren't flying to Ontario to watch indigenous theater. The most talented native actor of his generation was invisible to the people who controlled the money. Greene wanted something bigger, and in 1990, Kevin Costner picked up the phone. Number 4. 8 hours a day learning a language that wasn't his. Costner was looking for the right actor to play Kicking Bird, the thoughtful Lakota medicine man at the heart of Dances with Wolves. The role required someone who could project warmth, intelligence, humor, and dignity all at once. Costner found Greene. There was just one problem, a massive one. Greene was Oneida, part of the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, from the woodlands of Ontario. He was not Lakota. He was not from the plains. And he did not speak his own Oneida language, let alone Lakota. The residential school system and generations of cultural suppression had seen to that. Greene later told the Television Academy, "I don't even speak my own language. We were taught not to speak it. It's like forgetting your heart." So he studied Lakota, 8 hours a day, 7 days a week, until every scene worked word for word. He couldn't figure out how the language was structured. Its grammar bore no resemblance to English or French. But he refused to deliver those lines phonetically. He wanted to understand what he was saying. Every syllable, every prayer, every quiet conversation with Lieutenant Dunbar by the fire. Costner had mortgaged his own house to finish the film. Greene matched that commitment with sweat. And when audiences first saw him on screen, in what Indian country today later called one of the great entrances in movie history, they saw something no Hollywood film had ever shown before. A native man who was simultaneously the epitome of dignity and warmth. Fantastic hair, glorious beadwork, buckskin and feathers, completely at one with his horse, and then moments later falling all over himself in comedic slapstick when a naked Costner started yelling at him. Drama and comedy in a single scene. Greene had told Costner directly, "My people are among the funniest you'll ever meet," and he proved it. He also bonded with his horse on set, said they got on like a house on fire. On the final shooting day, a young boy approached him and explained that the horse had been his, sold out of necessity. Greene went straight to the producers. "Make sure this kid gets his horse back," he told them. "Take it out of my salary if you have to." That was the man behind the performance. Number 5. The Oscar he lost and the history he made. On March 25, 1991, Greene sat in the audience at the 63rd Academy Awards as a nominee for Best Supporting Actor. He was up against Bruce Davison for Longtime Companion, Andy Garcia for The Godfather Part 3, Al Pacino for Dick Tracy, and Joe Pesci for Goodfellas. The envelope was opened. Pesci won and delivered one of the shortest acceptance speeches in Oscar history. 5 words. That was it. Greene went home empty-handed. But here is what mattered more than any trophy. Greene was the first Oneida actor ever nominated for an Academy Award. He was only the second Indigenous performer in history to be nominated for Best Supporting Actor, following Chief Dan George in 1970 for Little Big Man. And as of his death in 2025, Greene and Chief Dan George remained the only 2 Indigenous actors ever nominated in that category. 2 men. In over 90 years of Oscar history, just 2. Meanwhile, Dances with Wolves earned 12 nominations and won 7, including Best Picture and Best Director for Costner. The film grossed $184 million domestically and over $424 million worldwide against a budget of roughly $22 million. It reset Hollywood's depiction of Native people overnight, and Greene was at the center of that revolution. The Oscar loss stung, but what came next stung worse. Because an Oscar nomination doesn't protect you when a director looks you in the eye and tells you that your race disqualifies you from a role. Number 6. The man who refused to grunt on command. Greene was blunt about what Hollywood wanted from him. When I first started out, he told Canada's Theatre Museum in 2024, they'd hand you the script where you had to speak the way they thought Native people spoke. You gotta look stoic. Don't smile. You gotta grunt a lot. I don't know anybody who behaves like that. Native people have an incredible sense of humor. He told the Television Academy, "My people just disappear. They hear a whistle, and whoosh, we vanish into thin air. I've tried to change that through my career." He hated being labeled. He told Reader's Digest Canada in 2018, "I hate that phrase, Greene, Native actor. You don't hear people say Denzel Washington, black actor, Or Kevin Costner, white actor. And then there was the Crimson Tide audition. Director Tony Scott looked at him and said, "I can't really see a Native American working on a submarine." Greene didn't hesitate. "If you could," he fired back, "I would let you tell my 4 dead uncles who died in the Pacific on subs. 4 uncles, dead on submarines, serving a country that had spent centuries trying to erase their people. And a director in a casting suite couldn't see a Native American on a sub." That silence in the room after Greene spoke must have been deafening. But Greene didn't dwell on moments like that. His approach to rejection was simple. Don't let it get to you. Just go. Move on. And he moved on into one of the most prolific decades any character actor has ever had. Number 7. The decade where he was everywhere. Between 1991 and 1999, Graham Greene built a filmography that would make most actors jealous. And he did it by choosing roles that existed apart from his ethnicity, or that shattered what a native character was allowed to be. In 1991, he starred in Clear Cut, playing a vengeful spirit who skins a forestry executive alive. It was ferocious. Indian Country Today later called it perhaps unmatched in the canon of Canadian film. In 1992, he played tribal cop Walter Crowhorse in Thunderheart opposite Val Kilmer. When his agent pitched it, a film in South Dakota where he'd ride a motorcycle, Greene said 4 words, "I'm in." His agent asked if he wanted to read the script. Don't have to. That same year, he played the title role in HBO's The Last of His Tribe, the true story of Ishi, the last surviving member of the Yahi people. Then came Maverick in 1994, opposite Mel Gibson, where Greene played Joseph, a con artist selling a Russian archduke the chance to hunt a real Indian. The premise alone was subversive, a native character running a con on rich white men, completely in control, playing their fantasies against them for profit. The Los Angeles Times said Greene got the most laughs in the entire film. In 1995, he showed up in Die Hard with a Vengeance as nip-to detective Joe Lambert, a cop. Not a chief, not a tracker, not a medicine man, a New York cop standing next to Bruce Willis and Samuel L. Jackson. Nobody mentioned his ethnicity once. And then, in 1999, came the Green Mile. Greene played death row inmate Arlen Bitterbuck, known as the Chief, the first prisoner executed in the film. His final scene remains one of the most quietly devastating moments in modern cinema. He asked a simple question before walking to the electric chair. Do you believe that if a man repents enough, he'll get to go back to the time that was happiest for him and live there forever? That question hung in the air long after the scene ended. And it carries a different weight when you know what Graham Greene was living through behind the cameras. Number 8. The 5 hours that almost ended everything. On a Friday afternoon in March 1997, at approximately 4:30 p.m., York Regional Police received a call about Graham Greene's home south of Lake Simcoe, roughly 50 miles north of Toronto. A family friend had called, terrified that Greene was about to take his own life. What followed was approximately 5 hours with an emergency task force before Greene finally agreed to be taken to York County Hospital for psychiatric assessment. He was 44 years old. He was one of the most recognizable indigenous actors on the planet. And he was in the darkest place a human being can go. Contemporary reports described him as upset over difficulties with family and friends. Greene later spoke about the episode with a candor that most actors would never allow themselves. He described depression. He described alcoholism. He described what he called the well. "I dove into that well just to see how far I could go," he told an interviewer years later. "I came out of it. Not totally destroyed, but I think as a better performer. A better person with tolerance." That word, tolerance, is the one that stays with you. Not anger. Not bitterness. Tolerance. He came out of the worst night of his life, and the thing he learned was how to be more patient with himself and with other people. Most men would have quit the business. Most men would have retreated to the reserve and never picked up another script. Greene went back to work. He took every role that came. He showed up on time. He knew his lines. And he never once used that night as an excuse for anything. The well, as he called it, was something he visited once. He climbed out, and he kept climbing. Number 9. The quiet second act that proved everything. Most audiences never knew about March 1997. They just knew that Graham Greene kept showing up. In Canada, he became a beloved comic presence, playing the dynamite-obsessed Edgar Montrose on The Red Greene Show for over a decade, winning Gemini Awards, and hosting the true crime documentary series Exhibit A. In 2000, he won a Grammy Award for Best Spoken Word Album for Children, sharing the honor with Kate Winslet and Wynton Marsalis. A Grammy. For a man who started as a carpet layer in Rochester. He returned to the stage at the Stratford Festival in 2007, playing Shylock in The Merchant of Venice and Lenny in Of Mice and Men. Two of the most demanding roles in the English-speaking canon, and he chose to do them on stage, where there are no second takes and no safety net, the same way he'd lived his entire life. In his later years, the roles got bigger, not smaller. He played Tribal Police Chief Ben in Wind River in 2017, a film whose closing card reminded audiences that while missing person statistics are compiled for every other demographic, none exist for Native American women. He appeared as Judge Foxman in Aaron Sorkin's Molly's Game, and joked from the bench that he'd just never seen it from this side before. He voiced Chief Rain's Fall in Red Dead Redemption 2. He played Scully in Marvel's Echo. And in the final season of Reservation Dogs in 2023, he played Maximus, reuniting on screen with Wes Studi and his own cousin Gary Farmer. Three men from the same generation who had spent decades fighting for the same thing: the right to exist on screen as full human beings. Greene and Farmer had performed comedy skits together at Six Nations events as young men. Decades later, they stood on the same set as elders. That arc is worth more than any trophy. Number 10. The legacy of a man who knocked down the doors. The honors accumulated in his final years. An honorary Doctor of Laws from Wilfrid Laurier University in 2008. Member of the Order of Canada in 2015. A star on Canada's Walk of Fame in 2021. In 2025, he received the Governor-General's Performing Arts Award for Lifetime Artistic Achievement, the highest honor Canada bestows on its artists. At the ceremony, he said simply, "It's so good to be working in Canada, and I don't have to go anywhere else but here, and to be honored for it." He had married producer Hilary Blackmore in 1990. They stayed together for 35 years. He had a daughter, Lily, from an earlier relationship with actress Carol Lazar, and a grandson named Tarlo. He lived outside Toronto with his wife, and, according to friends, a small army of cats. He built boats, he wrote. He played golf, which he described as a game where you get to play against yourself. He refused to move to Los Angeles. "There's no reason to live there," he said. "A working actor can live anywhere as long as you have a phone, a fax, and know where the airport is." A documentary about his life, No Reservation Required, was being produced by Carl Goldstein, who first met Greene as the first assistant director on Die Hard with a Vengeance back in 1995. 30 years later, Goldstein was still trying to capture what made this man so remarkable. On September 1, 2025, Graham Greene died peacefully in Stratford, Ontario. He was 73 years old. His manager said he passed after a lengthy illness, though the specific diagnosis was never made public. Kevin Costner called him a master at work and a wonderful human being. Lily Gladstone said he lived on the screen in an absolutely unparalleled way. TIFF programmer Kelly Boutsalis said he knocked down those doors for so many of these films that are being made today. And his agent's farewell captured what everyone who knew him felt. You are finally free. Graham Greene spent 15 years welding steel and laying carpet before he ever set foot on a stage. He studied a language that wasn't his 8 hours a day to play a role that changed cinema. He survived a night in 1997 that would have broken most people. He told a director about 4 dead uncles on submarines and never flinched. And he spent 50 years proving that the funniest, warmest, most stubborn man on the Six Nations Reserve could become one of the finest actors his country ever produced, without asking anyone's permission. If Graham Greene's story hit you the way it hit us, subscribe and stick around. We've got a lot more legends to uncover.